Thanks everyone for coming to our second Visitor Sector webinar on Qualmark this morning. I'm really pleased to welcome Gregg. Gregg, you'll see him there with the headphones on. Gregg is the General Manager of Qualmark, so he's going to be here to help us demystify this important tourism accreditation. And then we've also got Jacinda Cole, who is the owner of the Martinborough Hotel. And Jacinda's going to share her experience of the Qualmark process as she's just went through it herself. And then afterwards, we're going to have a question and answer session, which Angela Scott from Cloud 12 is going to facilitate. So you can ask all the Qualmark questions you have so we can get the answers that you need. So we'll just make a start now then. I'll hand over to you, Gregg.
Thanks. Now, hopefully we can get the technology right. And thanks very much for taking the time this morning. I thought more people would be watching Parliament rather than watching me. Now, has the presentation come up?
Yep, that's it up.
Wonderful. Well, look, thank you very much for taking the time out this morning. And I thought I should put a Martinborough shot in just for you, Jacinda, hoping that you'll soften your responses to how you found the Qualmark experience. But, I'm kind of a bit nervous about that, but we'll see. But look, thank you for taking the time. I just wanted to run through, and apologies, a bit dry, and this is my first presentation for quite some time, so I feel a wee bit rusty. But look, just wanted to start. That's not a good start. But, not having any movement here. Okay, here we go. There we go. Better. Nothing like a technical hitch to get things started. Look, one of the most important pieces in tourism, I often feel, is storytelling. So I think it's important to start by telling a story, and I really want to tell my story about how I arrived at Qualmark, and probably the only one here that can just about remember that's Angela, although I suspect you were still at high school. But I started my engagement with the wider Tourism New Zealand whānau the same year as Qualmark in 1993. That was pretty hard. And Qualmark in those days was a joint venture with the Automobile Association, and it stayed that way through to 2015. I, on the other hand, chose to go overseas and worked in Tourism New Zealand offices offshore. And I guess literally every day of that 23 plus years, my mantra was that tourism is the beating heart of New Zealand. I firmly believed that. There was barely a day that went by that I wasn't trying to convince somebody to get on a plane and come to New Zealand. I did time in North America, time in Europe, time in Australia, and travelled pretty extensively around those territories. Experienced a lot of the highs and a lot of the lows. I was on Manhattan during September the 11th, and at that stage I thought that was probably the biggest crisis I'd ever face in tourism. I never really expected to be back in New Zealand looking outward and seeing visitor arrivals for this year probably emulate what they were in that first year 27 years ago, which was still under 1 million international visitors. But really every day of my life was about trying to encourage people to come to New Zealand. I moved home right in the last week of 2015 and had the intention of finding a nice piece of beach and sitting, growing even older, watching the waves crash to the beach. As I started getting around New Zealand and experiencing lots of tourism products, I was actually disappointed. The years I've been away saying what a wonderful, wonderful experience you'll have when you come to New Zealand, I felt that there were lots of people that didn't appreciate fully the expectations of their international guests. There were a lot of instances where I didn't think service quality, service delivery, consistency was up to the mark on what I'd been selling, advocating, and promoting offshore. So after a short period of time, I was convinced to come back and work part-time for Qualmark first of all as an assessor, and then when the opportunity arose a couple of years ago, I took over as General Manager in Qualmark, because I firmly believed there was a need for Qualmark, but there was also a need for Qualmark to move with the times, change direction, change focus. So that's really what I want to talk about today, and take you along that journey. So really, that's why I'm at Qualmark. That's why I do what I do. But really, why do I think you should take Qualmark more seriously or consider Qualmark? And first of all, you know, I really, and the topic was around demystifying Qualmark. So I really want to start and say Qualmark is and should be far more than just quality assurance. Qualmark really should be one of the tools to help you achieve that industry goal of sustainability, that vision. Now, Chris Roberts uses the figure at Tourism Industry Aotearoa that sustainability is the #1 issue that the members raise with him. I think the figures last year were over 90% of members in their annual survey said, look, sustainability is the most important thing around tourism. The events of the last few months, certainly I don't think have changed that. I'm absolutely pragmatic, and I appreciate right now the issue is more about, absolutely is about survival. But I believe as we move out of that, as we start to see domestic markets open, as we start to see international markets open, we will pivot back towards sustainability, hopefully as a central pillar of what we do and what our businesses represent. And I don't really want to use the word reimagine. Already after just a couple of weeks, I'm sort of starting to feel the hairs on the back of my neck bristle a bit when the word reimagine is used and used so often. But Qualmark has to reimagine itself. The industry needs to reimagine itself, and I hope when it reimagines itself, that sustainability will be a central piece. And I hope all of you are familiar with Te Aki, which I've just put on there, which to me is quite a central part of that environmental sustainability story. So what does Qualmark look like? What is Qualmark? Well, as I said, I arrived back in 2015. Shortly after my arrival back, Tourism New Zealand had taken over Qualmark and repositioned Qualmark away from its traditional quality assurance focus into a sustainable business award scheme. And you will have, hopefully all of you are familiar with the new logo, the gold, silver, bronze hierarchy of awards, recognising businesses, their achievements across 4 areas. And look, right up front, it is one of the biggest pain points for me every day, telling people they're gold, silver or bronze. Nobody wants to be anything but gold. But people need to understand that we need to look at aspirational areas, and certainly, you know, a bronze award is actually recognising that you are in the top echelon of New Zealand tourism businesses, or in the top echelon of New Zealand businesses. So silver and gold, you know, recognise that you're even further up that tree. Currently, under 20% of members, I think, are gold. I haven't pulled those numbers in the last few months, but you know, it is quite an achievement to get to that point and to maintain that. The sustainable business piece is built around 4 core modules, and I'll go on to explain there is a difference between accommodation and other tourism activities, but just the core premise of the sustainable business system is the same and common for all businesses. And there are 4 areas of processes and procedures. The first is around economic processes and procedures. So that's everything from your standard operating procedures, reservation systems, marketing plans, business plans. It's really how you conduct your business. So that is everything from truth in advertising, what you're saying to your clients when they see you. How do you look after the money they pay you, or how do you look after the data they provide in terms of their personal information, right through to if you're in transport, what is important in terms of maintenance? How do you keep your fleet safe? If you're in a hotel environment, how do you make sure that routine and proactive maintenance is undertaken? So looking at areas like that. Environment and culture. The environment is around environmental sustainability. So it is about resource use. It is also about waste management. It's what practices do you apply in those areas. It also refers to your suppliers, your procurement chains. Who do you work with? How do you measure it? What goals, what ambitions do you have? And one of the things we really need within Qualmark, and a lot of the work that's going on behind, is trying to build those ambitions, those stretch targets, trying to bring people along for that story and absolutely aspire as an industry to reach those goals as set not only by government but as set by an industry. Also culturally, how do you tell the New Zealand story? And that's Pākehā, that's Maori stories. How do you tell it in an authentic way? How do you tell it in an engaging way? And I think that's really important. Similarly, how do you adapt your business offering to other cultures, whether it be religious, diet, or different countries or different disabilities? Quite important. Social and people is really important, and that is really about training. How do you do it? How do you measure it? How do you provide feedback? How do you have your staff work with you to make sure they are valued, that they grow, that they're inspired, that they are doing better? How do you measure it from a customer viewpoint, and how do you find, or how do you introduce those improvements into your business from those measurements or from that feedback, whether it be internal, whether it be Net Promoter Scores, TripAdvisor, Google, Facebook reviews, so working like that. And importantly, also around social license. Businesses must have respect for the communities they work in. And I think a lot of these areas are going to be increasingly important as we exit this phase. We all are seeing the comments around about over-tourism and crowding, and they're coming through whether it's in the domestic or in the international forums. So as responsible tourism managers, operators, we will have to be aware of those things. And how do you engage with your community? How do you engage with the industry? So really important. And then finally, health and safety. When the new Qualmark model was introduced late 2016 into 2017, it was after the introduction of the 2015 Health and Safety in the Workplace Act. So it really was quite a critical part of the assessment. Probably it was a reason that we lost, well, in the first year, I think 250 businesses didn't meet what we determined as minimum standards, and 167 of them actually left Qualmark rather than stepping up and making changes. But it is a really important part of people's businesses and their business responsibilities. We're not a regulatory body, we're not a statutory body. We cannot prosecute if you don't meet obligations, but we can give you some advice, and pragmatic advice. We're not safety auditors, but we can give you some pragmatic advice of how you can work within many of the regulations, whether they be health and safety or even licensing in different environments, whether again it be driving or in accommodation. So they are the 4 core elements of the Qualmark sustainable business model. It sort of cascades down below that, and I'm sorry, there's just no way I've found no way of trying to make this any more exciting. It really is pretty dull, and we use incredibly dull language. Endorsements. So if anybody can come up with some more sexier terms, please email me. I would love to not use an expression like endorsements. Endorsements represents all of the tourism businesses that work with us outside of accommodation. So we talk about visitor transport, visitor activities, and visitor services. Visitor transport, obviously, coaches, shuttles, helicopters, ferries, all of that type of activity. Visitor activities, anything that you can do in terms of a paid excursion or on-site specific activity. So that could be mountain biking, it could be visiting, doing a farm tour, visiting a museum, those types of things. Visitor services is sort of a catch-all beyond that. It's tour operators, it is souvenir shops, so all of those retail experiences and areas such as that. And we apply all of those. It's just a way of categorizing them. We also split and go one, and sorry, this, as I say, there's no simple way of saying this. We go another level further and look at different specific tertiary criteria. So we have different questions or requirements or expectations, for instance, not only in retail, but if you're a mountain biker or a tour guide or a guiding business, flight seeing business, all of those areas. So we really do tailor what we are asking for and what we are looking at to your specific industry as best we can. And most of those tertiary qualifications and criteria have been developed with the appropriate industry body. So Bus and Coach Association, Jet Boat Owners Association for jet boating, areas like that. A couple of areas that I believe we need to look at more firmly this year around agritourism, because we're obviously seeing a huge increase in activities in a rural environment, and that's everything from just rural activities going along. It could be trekking on a farm, it could be observing animals, it could be sharing sheds, it could be livestock demonstrations, right through to accommodation experiences in a rural environment. So I think that area is something that we need to absolutely look at more fully and understand it better, because different risk profiles, different activity profiles, and that's one we've got to engage with the sector. Similarly, one that I'm quite passionate about, salad-ors. They are different to the normal retail experience. We need to look and understand what are the most important things from a guest's perspective when visiting a salad-or. I use salad-ors as probably within tourism the most consistently well delivered storytelling within the industry is often at those vineyards and those salad-ors, because you're so often dealing with the people that may have planted the grapes, the people that are making the wine, or the families that own the environment. And these guys, whether it be through their websites, right through to the people that are in the salad-or environment, tell really wonderful stories. So if you're looking for inspiration for your websites or looking for inspiration for your guides, great way, go down to Martinborough, wander around the square. Jacinda or Angela can tell you some great vineyards to visit, but I guarantee you'll get some really good storytelling in that area. It's an area that sector does really well. Just around accommodation, we try and do exactly the same as what we do in endorsements and be really specific in looking at different types of accommodation. So we have currently 9 different categories of accommodation plus venues, and in each of those categories, and we're actually in the midst of reviewing all of them right now, we try and determine what are the most important aspects of that experience and upweight them and make sure that we really spend a lot of time measuring that from the end user perspective. So if you're thinking of a hotel example, you're really the bedrooms, the bathrooms, the customer service, the check-in, and often the restaurant bar experiences are really incredibly important. If you're in a backpacker, or a student hostel environment, then obviously there's a lot more focus on some of the communal living, the common rooms, the shared cooking or bathroom facilities. The same with a holiday park, apartments, motels. Obviously more focus on some of the self-catering facilities rather than some of the common space or the shared space. So all of those going through bed and breakfasts and boutiques and lodges, the higher level of staff to guest ratios. So the hospitality piece is very important in those environments. So really working through all of those to update them. Venues particularly is one that we've got to update as we're starting to get bigger, more international facing venues such as Auckland and Christchurch and now Wellington also coming on. We also in accommodation still have a star grading system that sits alongside. So we rate star gradings 1 star through to 5 with a plus star in the middle of each of those categories. And we will shortly separate out in the accommodation space, so you can either, because currently if you're Qualmark accommodation, you undergo a sustainability assessment as well as a star grading. We will split it out because there are some accommodation providers that only just want a star grading. There are others that say we're not interested in the star grading. We feel that user review sites or OTAs have their own star grading systems that we'd rather stick with. So we're quite happy just to have a sustainability rating. We want to benchmark ourselves against the best tourism products in New Zealand. So we'll do sustainability rather than star. So you will see us separate out those shortly when we've reviewed all of them. I guess the key piece around the star grading area is it hasn't been touched since 2012, 2014. So we really need to make it 2020 relevant. We need to make it 2020 transparent. And we need to make it 2020 objective. I don't want to see any more reports come back across my desk that basically say, we think your foyer would look better if it was painted pink, when in fact it's painted grey because that's the corporate colours for Distinction or Mantra or whoever the brand is. And so we can't have those subjective objective areas. We've got to be a little bit better than that. And we've got to be a little bit clearer in terms of what we're expecting. At the moment, there's a little bit of white man's magic sometimes in some of the assessments. The process is under change and review, and that's really important to make these distinctions, and I'm sharing these with you before they're announced more broadly, because I think it's really important when talking to a group such as yourself who are thinking about joining. Many of you are thinking about joining the Qualmark journey. So currently how Qualmark happens is you might send in an email to inquire, or you might phone one of our sales managers. They'll talk you through and say, yes, look, you should join as a boutique and lodge accommodation provider. Now what we'll do is you fill in the form and send in the check, and we'll assign you to one of our tourism business advisors. And we have a dozen tourism business advisors spread around the country. Some only do accommodation, some only do endorsements, some do a combination of both. And I'll tell you a little bit about them in a few moments. But you're assigned to one of those people. They will ring you and have a bit of a chat and say, look, pre-evaluation, these are the types of things that I'd like to see when we visit. They then arrange a time to come. They'll spend a couple of hours with you and then provide you a report and a score. I don't think that's good enough anymore. And so how we're changing the process is, first, certainly you'll still have the inquiry phase where you either speak to us and establish what category would work best for you, answer questions that we may have. It's important And in areas like health and safety, for instance, it's important to understand and help you understand some of your obligations. And we get many of these issues. And if I was to use the farm stay as a classic example, we could easily license you as a bed and breakfast, but the minute that your guests walk outside and want to undertake those farm experiences, there's a whole different risk profile and health and safety regime that's in play. So when I say we'd like to look at having perhaps an agri-tourism sort of sector, we would want to capture both of those things. Again, bed and breakfasts. If you're a bed and breakfast and you're on a river and you've got kayaks, it's important that you understand health and safety obligations of letting people get in those kayaks and go paddling. Or if you've got just a couple of electric bikes, that you understand the obligations of letting your customers get on those bikes and go riding in case anything goes wrong. And it's really making sure you understand the implications of those types of things. So we answer those questions. We then really want to put you through an online, I guess it's business fundamentals and tools. It's important. Qualmark is not about pass or fail. It's not about trying to catch people out. Well, it shouldn't be about trying to catch you out. It should be about helping you build your business, build your capability. It should be about trying to ensure that we set you up for success and we meet your expectations of joining us. So when you get into that pre-evaluation phase, we need to be really, really clear to you exactly what we will be wanting to see when we visit. We need to be giving you tools, templates, frameworks, if you're a new operator, that will help you get to that point. We need to be giving you examples to make sure that when we do come and see you, that you actually have the chance to shine, that you absolutely understand what the expectations. And the last thing we want to do is come and visit you and go away and say, sorry, you didn't pass. We want to come and see you and help you do well. Think about it in the context of a driving test. You do your provisional driving test, and once you've done that, then you're good to go on the road, and that's what happens. So we will set that up very shortly. We're just working through that as part of an upgrade of our IT system, and that's the way people will enter Qualmark in the future. Once you've gone through and you're happy and you've submitted material and you understand our expectations, then we will assign you to a tourism business advisor, and that tourism business advisor will work with you to get you ready if anything's still you've got questions or concerns, and then they will come and visit you and make that assessment. They'll spend 2 hours plus on site with you, however long it takes, hopefully, and then after that you'll be provided a report which will give you your award and some scores. Currently, that report, and Jacinda might speak to her report, talks about opportunities, areas that will be discussed on the day where we see you could potentially make improvements or changes, and those opportunities are generally based on observed international practice or observed best practice across the 1800 businesses that we see annually within New Zealand. What is pretty key with the new report structure will be starting to benchmark. We want to be able to show you how you're performing against your peers and how you're performing against the overall industry. And I think that's really important. We've got to inspire people to improve. We've got to show people where they stand and really got to show people a pathway. So that's a piece that we're working on. It'll take time to build that data set that we can share, but that will be a part of reports going forward, probably from next calendar year. If you currently operate, for instance, in the accommodation sector, You may be used to tools like Review Pro, Revinate, many of those systems, and they are really good at providing information on how you benchmark against your top competitors. We're not looking to share individual information. We're looking to share aggregate information to help you see how you perhaps perform within a region, perhaps perform wider, perhaps within a category. So that'll be the changes. I mentioned our tourism business advisors. The tourism business advisors come from a broad range of backgrounds. Some of them have been in hospitality or tourism all their life. Many of them are former owner-operators. Many of them come from other walks of life. We've got people who have worked in big hotel chains. We've got health and safety assessors. We've got people that have worked right through different areas of the business. And what we're trying to build is, I guess, a variety of knowledge that we can share within our pool for your advantage. So, you know, sometimes our TBAs mightn't be able to answer the questions, but they've got 11 other colleagues that may be able to answer the questions, as well as a resource base to draw on behind that. So just wrapping up, what are the benefits of being a part of Qualmark? Now, if I'd been talking to you in February, I would have been standing here saying, look, it's really important that we're hardwired into the DNA of Tourism New Zealand. And Angela particularly would understand this part, because many of the clients she works with are Qualmark members because they want to go offshore with Tourism New Zealand. They want to host international media that Tourism New Zealand bring to New Zealand for mills or other projects. And Tourism New Zealand have a positive preference policy towards using Qualmark members. That's based on the Tourism New Zealand board wanting to make sure their obligations under health and safety are met, that each of the businesses that they either put their guests to New Zealand or their staff in has passed a rudimentary assessment of health and safety in other areas. So that's really important. Increasingly, things like newzealand.com, whether that be newzealand.com within New Zealand or internationally, if you're a Qualmark member, you get preferred listings on that. Of the top 500 businesses that received leads from international visitors or New Zealanders last year on newzealand.com, 380 of the top 500 were Qualmark members. And most categories, you'll go the same. If you go on to newzealand.com and look at the categories you're in most you will see the first 2 or 3 pages are only Qualmark operators. Believe me, they generally get the lion's share of leads, unless you are lucky and you are based in a unique area. And it's when you get to very detailed or specific searches that sometimes those other businesses pop to the top. So really, really important, particularly if your aspirations are to move in that international market or to work with Tourism New Zealand in market development. It is a real impediment for regions to get travel agent or wholesaler for mills to an area if they're not Qualmark. So it's one that we're constantly working with the Tourism New Zealand trade team. The second piece is the power of that New Zealand firm. This is one of the few ways that an independent business can get to use that official New Zealand government firm. There are not many other ways that you can do it. Believe me, overseas, and you know, on a monthly, if not weekly basis, we would be telling businesses they can't use that firm, international businesses they can't use that firm, or signing agreements with them so they can use that firm by meeting obligations under training or advertising. That New Zealand firm is incredibly well known internationally. It's an incredible endorsement to put alongside your business, particularly with the international distribution system you're now increasingly seeing through Asia, businesses wanting to only deal with officially recognised government sanctioned businesses, and they look first to that firm for recognition. As I say, Qualmark is not only about quality insurance, it is about giving you access to tools, insights, and advice. So just because a tourism business advisor will only visit you when you're a member perhaps once a year, you are able to ring them and ask them, or ring me and any of the team in Auckland at any time during the year for advice, information, help with assisting you break into either Tourism New Zealand programs or others. Last week, a classic example would be Richard Benton, who many of you may know, rang. He wanted to launch his a new domestic offering to the New Zealand market. He rang me same day. We had an approach from 7 Sharp. So because he is Qualmarked, we were happy to put him forward straight to 7 Sharp. He featured on 7 Sharp that night and had bookings within half an hour of featuring. So the Qualmark is a great pipeline into Tourism New Zealand and their distribution. It's also an independent assessment. And as I said before, Qualmark as a business sees 1,800 businesses a year across New Zealand. Most of the tourism business advisors see in excess of 100 businesses. So it's an independent assessment of how you sit within the marketplace and elsewhere. We have some assessors who are very practical. So for new businesses that need a help, and you know, I can pull up letters of saying, your assessor was really great, they showed me how to make beds properly, right through to more strategic advice. You know, it passes the whole gambit. Distribution system recognition. For instance, if you are a member of TEC, Tourism Export Council, you have to be Qualmarked if you're a full member. And when they are selecting businesses to work with, they give preference to Qualmark. So again, it's a recognition by them that somebody has been through a business and independently assessed them. And finally, as I say, I think benchmarking data and better provision of data will be increasingly important for businesses as we move forward, understanding how you're performing, whether it be in domestic, international markets, how you're performing against others, how you're performing against other regions, areas that you may be not performing as well against your peers. So a really, really important piece. And you know, it's one that many of our members have been crying out for and asking. Look, my last one is probably a slide of often the Q&As I get when I do speak to people. And so I'm just going to throw them up and just talk really, really quickly to a few of those points before passing over to Jacinda and also any questions. We have changed. We have a turnover of Qualmark assessors of probably 30 to 40% each year. And that's really important to bring in new skills and different skills. In the past year, we've brought in qualified health and safety assessors, people with extensive backgrounds within national tourism organisations and regional tourism organisations, people who have worked in distribution systems and media sales and hospitality. So really adding to the skill set of the team. Agility. Often people say, how can one of your assessors go from the Intercontinental Hotel in Wellington one day and Martinborough Hotel the next day? How can we be assessed on the same criteria? Look, you know, we need to be agile and understand what's fit for purpose. What is fit for purpose for a family-run business, be it a motel or a farm stay, is very, very different to what's fit for purpose for a big hotel or a medium-sized hotel. So we understand that, and we don't, please don't think because you're small you can't score big. Some of our businesses that we recognised last year in our first 100% pure New Zealand Experience Awards were bed and breakfasts, because they really exhibited manaakitanga and they really, really exhibited great systems and a commitment to sustainable principles. So, and also our tourism business advisors are trained to be agile. Sometimes you may want them to be an auditor, but most of the time we want people to be advisors. We want to send people in to help you succeed, and that's really important. So it is about capability building. Yes, there is some compliance checking, but it's more, the focus is on capability building. My biggest bugbear is how can we be consistent across the country? We spend a lot of time on it. A lot of work goes into building the knowledge base behind our criteria with industry sectors, with partners, to build it, to make sure that it's consistently applied, that it's objective and it's transparent. So really, really important. As the next point goes, you know, I don't see people as license holders. It's not a club. It's not about giving people just a badge. It is about working with people. I'm committed. I want to see you all succeed as businesses. You're my partners. I'm a membership organisation, particularly in a recession. I'm really dispensable. So, you know, I want to know from you how I can add value, how I can bring people on board. So it's really understanding your needs, it's understanding your expectations. And as I said early on, it's about being pragmatic. At the moment, it's about survival. What can we do? What tools can we provide to you, or what assistance can we provide to you that will help you keep operating? And like everybody else, we're having to pivot many of our insights and information around to what's appropriate for a domestic market. So making sure we work really close with Bjorn in Tourism New Zealand and the domestic marketing team, so we can help you understand what they're doing and how you can engage with that. Really important. Anybody that's been around me in the office is about more carrots, less sticks. As I said, if I was talking to you all at the start of the year, I could have very easily sat here and said, if you want for Mills, become Qualmarked. That's a stick. The carrot is, guys, what do I need to do to help you join Qualmark, or how can I help you even if you don't join? Have I got tools in our toolkit that you're free to use that's going to make your businesses better? If you join, that's wonderful. If not, I just want to make sure the tourism industry is a better place. Poor sales pitch for a guy who's in a membership industry, but right now, for the next 6 months, we are free of charge. We've given all of our members, nobody in tourism has really got much for cash flow at the moment, so we've put everything on a fee holiday from March for 6 months. At the moment, new members are coming on, they get that 6 months free of charge. That may well extend. We're working with Tourism New Zealand on that. I don't know by September what it's going to look like, but I don't suspect the industry will have picked up incredibly. So, you know, we're working. You know, it's more important to making sure the supply side of tourism survives than Qualmark survives on the revenue of members. So currently, under the current fee structure, most businesses, small businesses, would pay somewhere between $700 to $900 a year for a Qualmark membership, depending on size, staff, or if you're in accommodation rooms. At the moment, look, that's all up for debate, how that goes. We will be announcing some new tools and some further enhancements and changes in the next few weeks. But look, I think I've spoken enough, so I am going to attempt to leave my presentation and hand over to Jacinda. How's that?
Thanks, Greg. And firstly, I don't think you've got any need to be concerned about what I'm going to say. Our experience with Qualmark overall was really positive. I'm not just saying that either. I will be completely honest with you all here, but we did, had the assessment in January this year, and the overall experience was really positive. So nothing to worry about there. So first, a little bit about myself and kind of our background story. Tim, my partner, and I took over the Martinborough Hotel in 2018, about exactly 2 years ago, and we came from a very different background, having no experience in tourism or hospitality, and having lived overseas for the last 15 years. It was a massive learning curve, as you can imagine. But the hotel is a beautiful building. We love Martinborough, and it was kind of something we were really passionate about, and we were able to do it together, like a sort of a new business together. That was how we ended up here. And since we took over, we have undertaken quite extensive refurbishment of the property, to sort of firstly to put our mark on it, I guess, to make sure it's something that it's a place that we want to stay in. That's really where we thought we don't have the experience in the tourism industry, but we've enjoyed a lot of travel in our time, and if we make the Martinborough Hotel somewhere that we'd like to stay, then hopefully it will attract others to stay to it. So we have had a pretty extensive refurbishment program since we started, and I feel like there's been a real steep learning curve in understanding the tourism industry and understanding our market and where the Martinborough Hotel fits in, and we've just learned a huge amount in the last 2 years. And so in terms of our Qualmark journey, from the outset we had it suggested to us by a number of people, and fairly strongly, that we should be Qualmarked. And we agreed, but we also wanted to understand what Qualmark would mean for us first. Given we didn't have experience with it, we really wanted to understand what does Qualmark mean in New Zealand. And also we wanted the property to be something that we're proud of before we went down that path, to make sure we came out with a rating where we knew that we'd done our best, and we could be proud of whatever came out. So I actually met with Gregg at Trends last year, I think, wasn't it? So we talked a little bit about it then, and I think at that point Tim and I were getting to the stage where we felt, yeah, we are on track to get ourselves rated, I guess, and find out where we stand versus our peers. And we'd also felt that, yes, we do see value in Qualmark itself. I think initially I was probably a little skeptical and thought, oh, there's so many reviews online. People just use those now. And I think that's true to some extent, but they're so unreliable. And I'm sure, as you guys experience, they can be thrown out by one bad review that feels pretty unfair. Whereas the Qualmark rating system is so structured and consistent that it provides a rating that you can really trust. And honestly, now having gone through the process, I think I would look for a Qualmarked property because I know what they've gone through to get that. And then another factor for us was definitely that we were missing out on Tourism New Zealand for Mills. I know they were coming to the region, but they couldn't stay with us, which was a real shame because it was an opportunity missed. And I understand there's nothing you can do about that other than get Qualmark. So I think we were getting to the point where we were ready to do it ourselves. I understood more about the process. I think the kind of clincher for us was that the emphasis on sustainability, which also is a focus for us here at the hotel. We've really tried to implement sustainable practices across the board since we've started, and so that emphasis on sustainability from Qualmark really kind of rung true for us, and I felt like it's something we believed in as well. We eventually made the decision to go ahead towards the end of last year, and that timing of that decision was when, like I said, we sort of felt proud of the property and we were ready to do it. We had some best practices in place and the rooms were in a good state. But we were also at a point where we thought, okay, we've done our best, but we don't know whether that is enough. We don't know, because we don't have the industry experience, whether that is what everyone else is doing. You know, I think you can only gauge so much by talking to other people in the industry. You don't really know what's going on behind the scenes, and I think we realised that we could do with some guidance from people who've had a lot more experience in the industry than we have. So we pushed go, I guess. We decided to go ahead at the end of last year and started the process, and the process was exactly as Gregg has described it. It was very straightforward. We made the decision, and then we had an appointment booked for about 6 weeks out, where we knew we would have an assessor come and actually stay with us, which was great. They stayed the night before and then spent the best part of the next day with Tim and I, and then with looking around the hotel. That period of 6 weeks between kind of making the appointment and them actually arriving was when we did receive a lot of overview documentation about what was expected, and sort of broken into separate categories of how we could, the kind of minimum, I guess the minimum expected for each category to try and achieve some sort of rating. And I think that was helpful, but it's good to know from what Gregg's just said that they're looking to improve that process somewhat. But Amanda, who did our assessment, was very responsive. Whenever we had questions, we were able to get more information on what was expected of us. We then had the site visit and then the follow-up report. And I guess maybe the next thing to talk about is top tips, because it sort of came out during that process. I think if you go ahead, one of the biggest things to do is really make the most of that time between when you've got your assessment booked and that lead up time. Amanda was very clear to us that, you know, if there's anything we're not clear on, if there's any documentation we don't have, we don't understand what's expected, just ask them, and they sent templates, or they would direct us to websites. For example, I know that one thing we didn't have in place formally was a practice around the well-being of staff. And it's the sort of thing we did informally. You know, we have a really good team here, and I feel like we know them all well, but we don't have any, I guess, structured well-being practice. And Amanda was able to direct us to some really useful websites and documents where we could start to think about how to implement that in a more of a best practice way. I definitely make the most of that lead up time, and don't feel like you've got to figure it all out yourself before the day, because actually I've found genuinely they want to help you to do it better. So I think I was a little bit sceptical about that before we went into the process as well. You know, as Gregg said, and others had said to us, they are here to partner with you. And I thought, oh, really? You know, surely they're out to get me. But no, they actually were there to partner with us. And Amanda was really helpful at giving us guidance and giving us templates, and, you know, all of those things that meant that the actual day of the assessment was really, there was no surprises. We knew exactly what to expect, and we had everything there. We knew, and we could say up front, look, we've got this part of the risk assessment, but we know where they're missing this, and this. And it was just, I think it's important to go into that day without having any surprises. So the more discussion you can have in the lead up, the better. I think the other thing, that we found really valuable is the huge experience that Amanda has in the industry that we didn't have. And my tip would be to really leverage that as much as you can. I mean, I haven't had any other opportunity where someone who has experience in the industry has come into our business and given us constructive criticism or praise on what we're doing well and not doing well. I don't see any other avenue that this happens other than through Qualmark. So I'd absolutely make the most of that experience that they bring to your assessment. And just bear in mind that it's to help you. It's not to mark you down. I think another positive to take out of it is that it was fit for purpose, like it was fit for our business. We are a small business. Tim and I do everything. And we have a team of staff, obviously, who are wonderful, but we are, your typical family-run business where we pick up whatever we can, whenever we can, and we're not an intercontinental. So I didn't want to be benchmarked against them, against the big hotels. Even though we are in the same category, we fall into the hotel category rather than boutique or lodge. I feel that the assessment was done in a way that was realistic according to what we needed for our business, for our staff and for our guests. So it wasn't, it was reasonable for the size of our business. And it also made me realise that we were doing a lot of things we were supposed to be doing, but we just weren't documenting them. And I think that's probably a common situation across smaller businesses. You're doing the right things, you're catching up with staff at the right time, you're telling them the right things, you'll maybe have a health and safety process in place, but it's not documented as well as it should be. That was certainly our finding, but it meant that it sort of forced us to document those areas where we hadn't quite got around to. It gave us a deadline, we had to do it, and now it's just a matter of maintaining it. So I think that first assessment and the process leading up to it was daunting and did require a lot of work to make sure we were documented, but now it's in place and it's very easy to maintain. The report we received at the end was really useful. I think there could be more detail that would be provided. You come out with I can't remember the exact wording you used, Gregg, but like each category has like expectations met or exceeded or not done so well, and doesn't necessarily give more colour around it. But Amanda did talk us through a lot of things that she suggested we could do better. So it is a useful report to refer back to understand for next year what we need to focus on. And we came up with a rating of 4-star silver, which is what we'd hoped for. We're realistic in that we're not going to come out with 5-star gold, but 4-star silver was exactly what we'd hoped for. So that was a relief. I think that's about it. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I'll pass back to you, Gregg, or Ange.
Awesome.
Thank you.
That was great. Awesome. Rebecca, I'm just conscious of time. How are we going?
Yeah, we're just after 12.
After 12.
We can maybe do a quick Q&A if anybody's got some burning questions.
Just on a really quick summary, I just want to say a couple of words. More than ever before, we're in such a crazy time with our tourism industry, and this is such a great opportunity to do a little bit of a sense check of your processes, procedures, and all the stuff that Gregg was talking about and Jacinda about that sustainable business model. And we want to be sustainable. We want sustainable business going through. And when we come out at the end with some new normal, everyone's got hopefully everything ticked off. And Qualmark is such a great platform to do that. I know I've been a big advocate of Qualmark for a long time. And I'm hoping that this session today has demystified some of the questions that you might have. But wow, the benefits that Gregg outlined, what Jacinda just talked about, you've got a pool of advisors there that can help. And it's an easy process. So yeah, it's a great opportunity right now while we're all, hate to say it, pivoting. And I'm not going to say it, Gregg, the other word, the R one. But if you can get on board, it's a very simple process. And wow, there's 6 months now, Gregg, you're saying that is potentially free of charge, FOC. So has anyone got any questions at all before we wrap this up, or no?
I'm happy to answer questions by email. So fire them through the team, and we can come back.
Great.
Particularly if you've got any specific questions to your business.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, that was That's fantastic. Rebecca, do you want to wrap up?
Yeah, great. Thanks again, Greg and Jacinda, for giving us your time today to talk us through Qualmark, and Greg, from your point of view, the process and what it involves, and Jacinda, how you've experienced it. Really, really, as Angela said, helpful just to know more about it and put some of those preconceptions to bay as well, and for us to actually see how it could really benefit some of our businesses in the region to get on board and to get Qualmark. So thanks again, everybody, and that'll be us for today. We're back again on the 26th with Maverick Digital, again talking around digital marketing. So we'll be out with more details around that session shortly. So thanks again, everybody, and have a good rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Greg. Thanks, Jacinda.
Thanks.
See ya.